right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are taking a break from our regular format to talk about our favorite movies of 2020 so far. We're at the midway point. It is a very strange year for movies, obviously, with everything that has been happening the last few months with COVID-19 and the theaters being closed. And, piecing it together, we have stayed active. There's been a constant stream of movies to cover, as well as looking back to some older movies in our side series like Missing Pieces and Breaking It Apart. But honestly, even without those, there's plenty of new movies for us to cover all the time. And it's been a weird year, but there's been some great movies, even the stuff that came out before the shutdown and the stuff that's been relegated to just VOD releases and streaming. Those of you who know me know I don't really love watching movies at home. I'm forcing myself to do it. I very luckily got a new TV right before the shutdown, like literally the week before the shutdown. First TV in like 7 years. Very random luck that I just happened to get a brand new fancy 4K HDR blah 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 TV. So that's made it a little easier, I guess. But I have trouble locking in when I'm at home and just really fully enjoying a movie. So I can't wait to get back to the theater, but I don't know when the hell that is going to be. So in the meantime, I have been forcing myself to sit down and watch new movies so that way I could keep talking about them here on this show, and so we could do this countdown, because there's a bunch of movies that made it onto my list that I only got to watch at home. And that makes me a little sad, but it is what it is. So joining me for this conversation is Josh Bell. He's a film critic. You've heard him here on the show before, and he co-hosts the Awesome Movie Year podcast, which I produce, and you should be listening to if you don't already. And another thing you should do is follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. You could also join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And you can go to our website, piecingpod.com, and sign up for the mailing list, where we just did a great contest, and we're planning on doing more contests in the coming weeks. So definitely go sign up for that mailing list and subscribe, rate, review, share, all that good stuff. So let's get into this conversation about our favorite movies of 2020 so far. All right, so today we are going to be talking about our favorite movies of this very strange year that has been 2020. And to join me for this, we've got our good buddy Josh Bell. How's it going, Josh?
Oh, it's going all right. How are you, Dave?
You know me. I'm doing great. I always do my best to stay positive through whatever crazy stuff we're going through at this moment. But Josh, what do you think about this movie year? Is this an awesome movie year so far?
Well, yeah, I mean, the weird thing about this year is that obviously we're not seeing movies in theaters, or we haven't been seeing any movies in theaters since the middle of March. And a whole bunch of movies that were supposed to come out in theaters have not been released. But at the same time, what that means is that a lot of movies that would probably have flown under the radar,
Sure.
Whether they would have only been released on VOD or streaming, or maybe they would have gotten small theatrical releases that have been shifted to, only online. Either way, they probably wouldn't be the movies that were like the main conversation pieces necessarily. And those movies are getting a chance to shine. So in a way, I think that's cool. I feel like I've probably had the chance to see and write about a lot of movies that maybe I otherwise wouldn't have, or at least wouldn't have written about. Maybe I would have seen them, or I would have noted them down. Oh, I should see that movie. That small film is supposed to be good, but my time would have been filled with seeing a bunch of big blockbusters,
Right?
And I maybe wouldn't have gotten around to them. So I think it's been a weirdly great year to spotlight small films, and there's been no shortage of movies released. I mean,
definitely.
At some point in the future, maybe we'll get to the pipeline slowing down. But at this point, production, I mean, there so many movies were produced, or at least shot and in post-production before this shutdown, that there's just tons of content. So That's been great. I feel like, I get up every day and there's a million movies that I could watch. I mean, in general, but also even just from this year, and just as we were preparing to do this and kind of looking at like, oh, what should I see to prepare for this? And I certainly didn't see all the things that I would have wanted to. So there's a ton of good stuff out there.
Absolutely. And I feel like one of the weird things, especially as I was, getting ready for this episode, I was trying to squeeze in some last minute movies and stuff like that. And something that I've been realizing is so many movies and this happens every year, where there's those movies that are listed as the year before because they, maybe had small little releases and then finally get the VOD release or the streaming release or whatever. But it seems like a lot of these movies have 2019 release dates on them, even though they didn't come out in any meaningful way before this, other than maybe a film festival or something like that. Have you noticed that, like in a lot of the movies that maybe are on our lists here?
Well, yeah, because I think part of the reason is that what we're getting mainly is those movies that, I mean, what would normally happen is with smaller films is that they play a bunch of film festivals to kind of build some buzz, and then they get a
Hmm.
commercial release, whether that's in theaters or just on online on VOD in some way. So I think those are like a lot of what we're seeing are movies like that
Yeah.
had kind of been playing around in small festivals, maybe for some amount of time in 2019. And a lot of the movies, the most of the movies that are getting postponed that we're not getting to see are movies that hadn't been shown at all because there are these studio films that were being, carefully calculated to premiere at a particular time.
Right. Right.
Um, so we get some. I mean, Netflix especially. I think Netflix original movies are their own weird animal, and most of their movies, although not necessarily all, they pick up festival movies. But any original production that Netflix kind of makes itself is held back for a big premiere, but that big premiere is just a Netflix thing. So something like, Extraction, or that stupid new Will Ferrell movie, or things like that are like the Netflix equivalent of blockbusters. We're still getting those, and those are still 2020 films.
I didn't think Extraction was going to come up on this conversation, but I'm glad
Well,
you.
it's definitely not on my list, but I mean, weirdly enough, because we've had this like absence of big action movies, like Extraction is like the biggest action movie of the summer.
Yeah, people like action no matter how good it is or how, I don't know how original it is. People just like to see some shit blow up.
I guess so. Yeah, Extraction is terrible as far as I'm
It's
concerned.
really bad.
Yes.
Yeah. That little remake was better. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. It was pretty
Oh,
fun.
did somebody do a homemade remake of
Yeah.
Extraction?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I'll have
So
to check that out. I
check
missed
that
that.
out, not Extraction.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into our list here. We'll go back and forth, and then we also have we've got some wild card honorable mentions that we're gonna get into at the end of the conversation. But for now, let's start with our number tens. What do you got for number 10?
So my number 10 pick is a movie I think I suggested to you to watch to catch up with, but I don't know if you got to it. It's a film called Driveways by the director Andrew Ahn. And this is one of those movies that if you look on IMDb, it's listed as 2019. I think it did play in a number of festivals over the course of last year, and then got a VOD release this year. And
Mm,
it's this it's a very small film. It's a very low key drama. And it's one of these movies where, like, it seems like the kind of thing that you would be advised against, where there's almost no conflict. It's
mm,
just a movie about nice people being nice to each other. But it's so emotionally rich. It stars Hong Chow, who's also on the most recent season of Homecoming on Amazon.
okay.
And she plays this woman who is kind of trying to clean up. Her sister has died, and she brings her young son to sell the sister's house, and discovers that the sister was this hoarder, and so they have to spend all this time kind of getting the house ready to sell. And as they're staying in this house in this small town, they meet their neighbor, played by Brian Dennehy in one of the last movies that he made before he passed away, um, who is this kind of old, seemingly crotchety Korean War veteran. And you
Mm,
would think it would be, this is the setup for like the wacky kind of comedy, like, oh, the cranky old guy makes friends with the little kid or whatever.
yeah.
And the old guy does make friends with the little kid, but he's not cranky in the sense that he's resistant. He's just kind of keeps to himself, but he's a nice guy who's kind of lonely a bit and neglected a bit. And these people just have this really meaningful and rich connection with each other. And so it's a bit about grief. It's a bit about coming to terms with family that you didn't know. And it's a bit about this older guy kind of reaching the end of his life and looking back at what he achieved. And it's just like, I cried at the end, man. I
There
did.
you go.
It's like 83 minutes long. It's really short, but it's totally beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I didn't get a chance to watch it yet. It is something I watched the trailer and I thought it looks really good. I'm hoping to catch it one of these days soon. Uh, it looks like a really interesting and sweet film, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, sweet, I think is a good way to describe it. It's very sweet.
Right on. Well, a little bit on the other end of the spectrum, something that came out in theaters towards the beginning of the year. One of the few movies I got to see in the theater that's on my list, and a movie I almost didn't include, but it squeezed its way into number 10, and that is Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman. Which
Ugh.
I know you weren't much of a fan of this one, and I was almost gonna put Arkansas in my number 10 slot, to be honest. It's like almost
They're
almost a
kind of
tie.
similar, really.
They are in a lot of ways, absolutely. But the reason The Gentleman had to squeeze in is because of Hugh Grant's performance, which just has stayed with me and is so much fun. And obviously, lots of people have talked about how fun his performance is in this movie, but it just made me laugh so much, and it's one of the really fun movie experiences I got in the theater this year. The movie itself is maybe doesn't recapture the Guy Ritchie thing of his earlier films, The Snatch and the Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and all that, but still, I thought I had plenty of fun with it, and like I said, mainly the Hugh Grant thing is what squeezed it into that number 10 slot for me.
Yeah, it's okay actually. My reaction there was maybe a little stronger than necessary. I think you're right. It tries to recapture that early Guy Ritchie thing. It doesn't quite do it, but it still has some fun stuff. And I like this is a movie. It's not as much a movie that like I really disliked. It's just a movie that I kind of didn't even remember existed. I
Right.
felt like that was sort of the impression it made on me. So, but Hugh Grant is fun in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and fun side note, my dad watched it a few weeks ago and bought it on our Amazon account, and now I own it, and I'll always remember that I have it because it's in my streaming account. So that's fun.
You can watch it anytime. You can just watch it over and over and over again.
Do you think I'll ever watch it again, Josh?
I hope not,
Probably
but
not.
you
No.
never know. Yeah.
I highly doubt it. So why don't we move on to your number 9?
All right. So my number 9 pick is definitely the most obscure thing on this list, and a movie that I never would have come across or expected to like, except I've been writing this column about obscure VOD releases every month for a website called Crooked Marquee. So I spend my time kind of like looking for weird things like Wrestle Massacre, and almost always these movies are very bad, but they're kind of fun to watch and fun to write about. And this movie, my number 9 pick, is a movie called Raising Buchanan, which I picked to write about in that column because it sounded like something that would be really dumb and probably bad. And it's about this woman who is kind of a loser, kind of a slacker. She's getting, around 40, and she's on probation from some petty crime, and she has a dead-end job, and she doesn't know what to do with her life. And she discovers that the corpse of President James Buchanan is in a warehouse in her town. It's in Phoenix. I think like a locally produced Phoenix, Arizona movie. And for some reason, the corpse has been loaned to some museum or something. I don't even remember. But she decides she's going to kidnap the corpse of James Buchanan and ransom it because it's a president,
Mhm.
and get money. And this is going to be her way to kind of turn her life around. And so she does this and discovers that nobody wants this corpse back or believes her that she actually stole it. And so it's this kind of absurdist comedy about her going down the list of people from the government to some museum in like Pennsylvania or wherever it is that he's from. And your favorite state guys, Robert Ben Garant has a small role as one of the people
Sweet.
that she calls. The main thing, I mean, it's a fun, goofy premise that's executed well, and Amanda Melby is the name of the star, and she's good. The main thing about this movie that is so good, though, is Rene Auberjonois, who is also just like Brian Dennehy. This is one of the last things he did before he passed away. And he plays James Buchanan as this kind of imaginary presence that the main character envisions, who is berating her about her dead end life, and then is also trying to defend his reputation as one of the worst presidents of all time. And it's just such a fantastic performance from Rene Auberjonois. And it's funny, but it also gives you this sort of like tragic sense of James Buchanan, who's sort of the presidential equivalent of this loser main character.
Right.
And he's great. It made me think I would want to watch a whole like one man show of him. And this is a movie that no one has seen. I was looking; it's been logged by 19 people on Letterboxd.
Wow.
But I hope more people see it. It is out on VOD. Raising Buchanan.
Yeah, this is definitely on my list of things that I really want to see. You told me about this a while ago. I think on the last time you were on piecing it together.
Oh yeah,
actually.
I think I did. Yeah,
and it sounds like something I would love. It just sounds so ridiculous and so fun.
I think I've been just like tooting the horn. I've been like the number one booster of this movie. I talked about it in my TV segment one week, and I'm gonna do my damnedest to get more people to watch it.
Well, it sounds great. I'm gonna go with my number 9, and another movie I got to see in the theaters. There's not a lot of them, but Michael Winterbottom's Greed, which is a ridiculous kind of mockumentary, sort of, with Steve Coogan as just this like totally like gleeful member of the 1%, and he's this rich asshole-ish guy who's he's trying to throw himself a birthday party, and in celebration of all of his own excess and like total no no knowledge of self, and he's doing it in a gladiator themed birthday party, not ancient like times Gladiator, but the movie Gladiator, which it's so ridiculous and so funny, and there's just a lot of really great moments in this one, and it was I guess a little under the radar. I think it finally hit VOD, like it took forever to finally come out, and I don't know if people are finally starting to see it. I know another Michael Winterbottom film is out now. Maybe that's taken a little bit more of the attention away, and this one's just going to continue to stay under the radar, but it's a great movie.
Yeah, I had read kind of mixed things about it when it came out, and I think I actually was offered the chance to review it, and I just didn't have any place to do that in, and so I didn't bother seeing it. And Michael Winterbottom is a weird director who's made like every kind of movie imaginable,
For
and
sure.
some of his movies I think are great. I love his like one other collaboration with Steve Coogan, 24-Hour Party People. I think that's a fantastic movie. So maybe I'll have to add this one to my list and see if it's up my alley. It sounds like a very funny premise.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you got for number 8?
So my number 8 is actually a movie that I just watched yesterday in anticipation for this and trying to catch up with things. It's called Sea Fever. It's a horror movie that it's basically like Alien or The Thing on a fishing boat.
Yeah.
I saw one person on Letterboxd described it as an episode of The X-Files that only shows you what happens before Mulder and Scully show up. And so it's derivative of all these things that I really like. And I feel like it's done really well. It's Hermione Corfield, I think is the name of the actress, who was also in another underrated horror movie called Rust Creek last year. She plays this grad student who is tagging along on a fishing boat, and she's trying to do some research, and she's kind of like standoffish, and she's not, she's just an academic, and she's not connecting with these salt of the earth fishing types. And they get out into the middle of the ocean, and there's a sea monster. They get attacked by a sea monster, and it kind of infects them with these like spore things. And it's a lot of really basic familiar horror movie elements that are just executed really well. Like it's, this single location thing, which is always, I think, effective in a horror setting. You got your 6 characters, they're trapped in this boat. They start to kind of turn on each other. They don't trust each other.
Right.
One or more of them may be infected. There's sabotage going on. And in the midst of it, you've got this really fascinating main character who has to step up as a scientist, but also as like sort of a leader, that she gets thrust into this position. And it's creepy, and it's got really good special effects for what I'm sure was not a very large budget.
Hmm.
So I wasn't entirely sure. I mean, I'd heard a lot of positive things, and it sounded like a kind of movie I would like, but I wasn't entirely sure if it would work for me. And up until maybe the very end, that's a slight anticlimax. I just think it's a really good horror movie. Sea
Right
Fever.
on. Yeah, I saw you had mentioned this one, and I watched the trailer, and it did look like very much like every horror movie, especially of this specific kind, and so
Yeah.
that's what stopped me from watching. I was like, I've seen this before, but from the way you're describing it, though, it does sound like it, maybe does some things like really well in the way where it's like it kind of transcends that a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. You have definitely seen this before. There's really almost nothing in the movie that you haven't seen before, but it all
Mhm.
comes together, I think, really well.
Right on. So I'll go with number 8, and again, 3 in a row that I saw in the theater.
Hey.
Maybe one of the more fun movies I saw in the theater this year, and that is Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man, starring Elizabeth Moss, and it is, of course, a major movie, probably one of the more talked about movies that actually got to come out in theaters this year, but it's a remake of the classic monster film and kind of given a modern update. And I think it's just a really great suspense film. It excellent score, and it just does some really interesting and unique things that I think kind of makes it stand out from just being more of just a run of the mill horror film.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And spoiler alert, it's coming up later on my list. So I'll save my comments for later.
Awesome. What do you got for number 7?
So my number 7 pick is a Netflix movie. It's not Extraction, though. It is The Platform, the
Mm,
Spanish horror movies. I feel like I think I've got a good amount of horror movies on this list, and that
seems
may
like
be
it.
because horror movies are often kind of shifted to VOD and streaming, and so we're getting a lot of those and not as much of some kind of movies in other genres.
Sure.
But I mean, The Platform is more than just a horror movie. I mean, it's an allegory. In fact, I think at some points it's maybe too much of just an allegory
Mm,
and not like a story. But I feel like it's really effective, the way that it kind of combines the social commentary of it with a lot of this visceral horror, with this main character who ends up in this weird prison thing that's divided into levels. And there's a platform that goes down from level to level with food on it. And the further down it gets, the less and less food there is on it. And our main character tries valiantly to kind of rally people to have solidarity and allow everyone to eat. And of course, just like in real life, that's not
yes.
how it works. So it's very blunt. Like you could not watch this movie and not understand like what it's saying about society.
Hmm.
But it just has like amazing production design, like the way this prison is constructed and the platform itself. And then it's got a lot of like really visceral, scary moments of violence. And it does like make you think, even if it's kind of hitting you over the head. So I thought it worked as just an experience, and then also it works as a political allegory. It reminded me of maybe like a Terry Gilliam kind of thing or something like that. So yeah, The Platform is on Netflix.
Great movie. I liked it a lot, and also a really great example of like a less is more kind of a thing, like to really just squeeze every last ounce of out of that little place.
Yeah, I
Amazing.
think so. And I think sometimes like you start watching this movie and once you get what it is about, which is like very easy to get, you think, or at least I thought, I was like, how is this going to be like a whole movie?
Right,
But
right,
they come up with a lot of different directions to take the story that manages to make it feel like it really warrants being a feature film.
for sure. Well, my number 7 is also a Netflix movie. It
Ah,
is Spike Lee's The Five Bloods, which I think was. We didn't do an episode on it here on the show. We probably should. Maybe we will one of these days. But I do think it was a little messy, a little all over the place. I think Spike Lee kind of had a lot of ideas that he wanted to explore with this thing and did every last one of them all in one movie. But in that movie, are some incredible performances from, I mean, just everyone in it. Delroy Lindo, of course, everybody, he's kind of dominated the conversation, but also Jonathan Majors, Chadwick Boseman, Isaiah Whitlock Jr. I mean, just really great performances. And then on top of that, I mean, I was just totally drawn into the story and, everything that was going on, even if it was, a little, like I said, a little all over the place, a little unfocused at times. But still, I think a great movie, great follow up with Black Klansman. I think Spike Lee is doing some great stuff.
Yeah, I think this is a movie that's going to be on a lot of people if they're making lists right now. And I was not a huge fan of it, to be
Mm.
honest. But I'm definitely in the minority on that. I would say because it's been very well received. But I agree with you that it's so all over the place. It's so full of just like a whole bunch of things that don't, to me, really fit together
Hmm.
necessarily. I feel that way about a lot of Spike Lee movies, and I'm rarely like super enthused about his work, so it's just kind of not my wavelength. And honestly, I thought Delroy Lindo, as much as he is a great actor, I thought his performance was kind of too much
A
at times.
little
So
over the top for you.
a little over the top. I mean, I'm sure that's what was called for by Spike Lee, but to me, it didn't strike me as much as a great performance. I preferred Clark Peters, who is also like always great, going
Hmm.
back to The Wire and everything, as the kind of quieter main character there, the main other guy that he plays off of. I thought he was really good. So I can respect that pick and I can respect that movie, but I didn't really enjoy watching it.
For sure. Well, what do you got next?
So my next pick is a movie that I did enjoy all the way through. Is a movie that is super entertaining. It's Bad Education, which is an HBO film, but another movie that was at festivals last year and then was picked up. And the director Corey Finley is someone who I was really, really impressed with his first film, Thoroughbreds, which was number one on my top 10 list for whatever that was 2 years ago, maybe, or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And this movie is very different. It's a movie that he didn't write. And so it has less of maybe a personal stamp on it, but it's still so well constructed, and like the editing in it and the pacing and the camera angles and just all of the way that he brings the script to life is great. Hugh Jackman is so good. I think this is the best performance Hugh Jackman has ever given as
Hmm.
this school superintendent on Long Island who's been embezzling money for years and is just beloved and charismatic. And even though he's stealing all this money to fund his lavish lifestyle, he clearly like really cares about all the
Hmm.
kids in the school district and they all really like him. Allison Janney as his kind of partner in crime, who is less likable, but
But
she's
equally
fantastic.
great, though.
Oh yeah, I mean the character, and it's a great contrast between the two characters and why she kind of is the one who gets arrested first and gets the blame first because she's not as much a beloved kind of person within the district. But yeah, they're fantastic. Geraldine Viswanathan, who I think is like a great up and coming star, is a lot of fun as the student reporter who discovers what's going on. And it's just a super entertaining movie and one of those crazy true stories that you just can't believe that every little twist in it is true. But it really is. I think it sticks to there isn't a lot of embellishment. And the writer is actually somebody who went to that school.
Right, right.
Although after like a few years after the scandal happened. So yeah, everybody has HBO Max now, I guess. You can watch it on there.
Yes, you can. And guess what, Josh Bell?
What?
My number 6 is Bad Education as
All
well. We
right.
did it. We did it. We tied
Hey.
one. All right. But yeah, no, I loved it. I didn't get to it for like a long time. I had seen all the praise this movie had gotten. Like, what did it come out in like February, I think, or maybe March? And I didn't get
Yeah, it
to it
was it
until
was
last
post
month.
shutdown. So yeah, maybe March.
March, yeah, and I didn't get to it till last month, but yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. And I also didn't realize going into it that it was that same director from Thoroughbreds, which I also absolutely loved. And it doesn't like seem like it's the same director, but I'm really interested to see what Corey Finley does next. I mean, very interesting filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, and as much as I really liked Bad Education, I kind of would hope that whatever he does next is a movie that he writes that is maybe a little more of a personal stamp like
Sure.
Thoroughbreds. But
Yeah.
but even if it's not, even if he gets hired to direct a Marvel movie or something, I'll be excited to see it. Whatever, he's obviously got a lot of talent in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so that's my 6 as well. So let's go to your number 5.
All right. Well, my number five is a movie that I saw in the theater. This is, I think, the first theatrical film that I've got on my list.
All right.
It is Kitty Green's The Assistant,
Mm,
and definitely a tough experience to watch this movie. And I'm glad I saw it in the theater because it's the kind of thing that you want to be like able to focus on,
hmm
and not be tempted to look away from. And it's a very slow movie, so you kind of have to immerse yourself in it. It stars Julia Garner, who is absolutely fantastic. She's a great actor. I know people see her a lot now because she's on Ozark, which is
Sure.
I'm glad that that's the case, even though I don't like that show. But I'm glad more people are seeing Julia Garner, and she's amazing in this movie as an assistant, a kind of like bottom rung assistant at this unnamed movie production company in this like really drab, ugly office building in New York City. And it's anyone who knows anything about this movie knows that it's meant to be a reference to the Harvey Weinstein scandal, and she
Right.
works for this unnamed boss that we never even see. We just kind of hear his voice from time to time, who's clearly just this terrible tyrant and also is taking advantage of various women. And as much as the movie is about that, it's also just about the like dehumanizing process of being the least important person in the office,
Sure.
and the way that she has to get there at like the crack of dawn and make everyone's coffee and make all these copies and just do all this stuff that everyone takes for granted, and everyone treats her terribly, even though she herself is not like sexually harassed. It's just that the way that she's diminished as a human being as this
Mm,
movie goes on, and in some ways related to her gender, and in some ways just related to the position that she's in.
sure.
Um, and the best thing this movie has is when she kind of gradually figures out that the boss is taking advantage of this particular young woman who's come in to be potentially an actress, and he's booked her a hotel room, and she realizes this is really not okay, and she goes to HR, and there's this centerpiece scene with Matthew McFadden, who's another actor who's been in a ton of things, and he's on Succession now. I think people are seeing him a lot, and he is the HR rep. And just the back and forth between the two of them over the course of this scene, as you realize how invested he is in protecting the company and the way he discourages her from making any kind of complaint. It's so uncomfortable, but it's honestly the best scene that I have seen in a movie this year, period. So I know I'm making it sound like it's like not fun to watch this movie, but it's a great like accomplishment of filmmaking. And it is available to watch at home. Kitty Green, it's her first feature, and it's great. The Assistant.
Yeah, I need to finally get around to watching this. It sounds like something that's really really great and really powerful and good. I want to see this for sure, and I haven't yet.
Yeah, I recommend it, but you just maybe you got to be in the right frame of mind before
For
you sit
sure.
down. It's short. It's short though. It's intense, but then it's over.
So I'll go to my number five, which is Baby Teeth from director Shannon Murphy, which is the newest movie on my list that I've seen. I just watched this yesterday, and I was something that I was trying to catch up on some movies before we recorded this episode, and so many people told me I needed to see it, and I mean, I just truly loved it. It's funny, it's weird, it's just it said you through like so many emotions throughout the story. The star Eliza Scanlon, she was last year in Little Women, and also in that Sharp Object show. She's fantastic in it. The what's the guy's name? I didn't write his
Is
name
it Ben
down.
Mendelsohn who's in it?
Oh, Ben Mendelsohn's awesome in it too, but no, actually, Toby Wallace is who I was thinking of, who's the other
Okay.
young actor in it. Also amazing, but yeah, Ben Mendelsohn is awesome too. Just a fantastic movie. Just really, I mean, it's hard to tell people about it because as soon as you hear like, oh, like the terminal teenager, coming of age movie, you think, oh, one of those. But it just does such an interesting spin on it, and just such a great movie. It was really, really enjoyable, and like I said, I mean, it just takes you really for a ride. And also the director, I believe it's her first film, Shannon Murphy. I know she worked in television, but just really a lot of interesting stuff in the way that she shoots things, the way that the film moves. It's just really just constantly going, like very kind of fast paced, even though it's kind of what otherwise would kind of feel like a slow story. It's just really well done movie, I thought.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about it. I definitely want to see it. It's on my list as long as it's not. it's no Me and Earl and the Dying Girl as far as those things go, as long as it's not like that.
You know what? This is probably going to be our next episode of piecing it together next week, and it's
Oh, did I ruin your puzzle piece there?
you didn't ruin anything. It's an impossible comparison to not make, but I think you'll like it more than that, though.
Well, I hope so. I kind of hated that one,
Yes,
but I've heard
sure.
nothing but good things about this. I definitely want to see it. I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Awesome. What do you got for number 4?
So my number 4 is a movie that I know we both liked, and I'm guessing it may be on your list still, but maybe not. Is a teen comedy called Banana Split that I just absolutely loved. It's another movie that I picked up for that VOD column that looked like kind of a fringe thing, and was just so entertaining and so enjoyable and so feeling like it's true to life of the teenage experience about the intense bonds of friendship and also the intense like crushes and relationships that people have as teenagers. It stars Liana Liberato and Hannah Marks, who are both fantastic. Hannah Marks also co-wrote the screenplay, incredibly talented. They play these two teenage girls who have dated the same guy. One of them is the ex and one of them is the current girlfriend. And you think that they would hate each other, but they turn out to become best friends. But they're hiding it from the guy that they're sort of mutual boyfriend / ex-boyfriend. And it's not about this guy who's kind of a one-dimensional character, although he has presence in the movie. It's really about the friendship and just the joy of finding a friend who understands you and the intensity of it. And it's funny and it's well crafted. And I think, it's been compared to like Booksmart, which a movie that I liked a lot. And I know you didn't really, but
Yeah.
I think people who like that, or people who like that kind of thing, even if you didn't like that particular movie, I just think these kinds of movies, if you liked Lady Bird, if you liked The Edge of 17 with Haley Steinfeld, which are these are all movies that I think are fantastic, and I think Banana Split absolutely belongs alongside there. And I just got an email the other day with the list of what's coming up on Netflix in July, and it's going to be on Netflix in July. So I hope that'll mean that a lot more people will get the chance to see it.
Oh yeah, that would be great because it's a shame that nobody has seen this movie, and
Yes.
so I completely agree. It's great, and it's like probably just right below my top 10. Like I really really loved it a lot. Also happens to be your partner in crime over at Awesome Movie Year's pick for best movie of the year so far. So.
Oh, is it? Yeah, Jason Harris. Did he send you a list or some comments or whatever?
Yeah, I'll read some more comments towards the end, but that is
all right.
that was his pick. So
yeah. Well, it's a good pick. I know he liked it a lot, and I'm glad that he picked it. I think it's a strong choice.
Absolutely. All right, my number 4 is a movie that really kind of took me by surprise, and that is The Vast of Night, an Amazon original from director Andrew Patterson. And it's just this movie that while you've seen it so many times before, this kind of War of the Worlds-esque UFO story, told basically a lot of which is happening via radio transmission, and it's so familiar, but at the same time, at no point did I really have a good idea of what might be coming next at any point in this movie. And I felt just like I was hanging on every word of the dialogue, which this is a very dialogue-heavy movie. And I just think it's so perfectly written, the way that these characters interact with each other and how they talk. And like I said, it's very dialogue heavy, and you're either going to be in for that or you're out. But I do think that this is one of the biggest surprises I've had this year watching a movie. I did not expect that much from it, and then I was just hanging on every minute of it, and just really exciting when something like that comes along.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, this movie has been heavily hyped and it's gotten great reviews, and I was looking forward. It's the kind of thing that I usually really like.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. I felt like I sort of admired it more than I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed with the way it was put together, and it's done on a really small budget. And what they managed to do on that budget is really, like, the cinematography is amazing, and the score is really good, and the performances. But I guess I don't know. It didn't like reach me as much, like, as an emotional experience, but I definitely liked it, and I'm definitely interested in whatever that director or whatever Andrew Patterson does next. I mean, it's been such a huge sensation. I was joking about Corey Finley, but he's the kind of guy, having made this movie, that he'll probably get to make like a Marvel movie next.
I know. It does seem like it for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's move on to our top three. What do you got for number three?
So my number 3 pick is a movie that you mentioned already, is The Invisible Man from Lee Winnell. And even though this movie was very well reviewed, I was a little skeptical because I haven't particularly cared for a lot of stuff that Lee Winnell has done. And the last movie that he directed, Upgrade, was a movie that was really well reviewed and I thought was completely stupid. And I didn't enjoy. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be into this. But I loved it. I thought it was great. And I think, as much as like Lee Winnell does an excellent job with the direction here, something that I don't know if you and I were talking about this, or I've been talking about this with somebody, the idea that you can create suspense and scares by just pointing the camera at nothing,
Right.
I think is so impressive. That, because the Invisible Man is the villain here and you're afraid of nothing, that you just kind of pan the camera over to a corner in the room and you can make the audience tense up. Like,
Yeah.
that's great. But Elizabeth Moss, I think, is really the reason why this movie works.
Sure.
She's such a fantastic actor, and it's a part that she's playing that could easily be ridiculous, where she has to be afraid of nothing the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think a lesser actor could have made that just fall apart, but she's so good that you believe it every step of the way. You're with that character every step of the way. So I think maybe seeing this in a full theater also helped, when you kind of go along with an audience. And maybe if this was a movie that I didn't get to see until I saw it at home, then I wouldn't have liked it as much. But yeah, certainly I would say the best experience I had in a movie theater this year, up until the point where we couldn't go anymore.
That's right. Absolutely. But yeah, and I think it's true. As much as the movie does so many like interesting, inventive things, like you said, with the scares based on just pointing the camera, it is the Elizabeth Moss show basically for the whole 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's great in it. And I know this has been a good year for her. I haven't seen Shirley, but I'm sure she's amazing in that as well.
Yeah. So my number 3 is a movie that I'm sure you liked because we talked about it here on the show. That is Oz Perkins' Gretel and Hansel, which is, I think, just like a perfectly just visual film. I mean, it does so many interesting things visually that just kind of stick in your mind, and it's so unique and interesting, and to tell a classic story that we all know so well, and to do that in just an interesting new way, I think is really exciting. And also some really great performances. Obviously, Sophia Lillis as Gretel, and then of course Alice Krieg as the witch. And I mean, it does some really, really exciting things, and it was a fun one to talk about on the show. Getting into some of the things that we felt were inspirations on that. It was definitely a fun conversation to have. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of the better things I got to see in the theater this year.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I'll say more about it in a later pick. So,
Coming up soon.
Coming up very soon.
All right, what do you got for number 2?
So my number 2 pick is another movie that we talked about on Piecing It Together, but that I know you were not a super fan of, but that I absolutely loved, is Sella and the Spades, which is an Amazon original. Amazon, let's also, I just want to shout out to Amazon and their original movie division, which has been killing it this year, between Sella and the Spades, and, as you mentioned, The Vast of Night. There's Blow the Man Down, which is a really kind of fun noirish thriller, and 7500 with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, all really good movies, Amazon originals that have come out this year. But Sella and the Spades, to me, by far is the best of those movies. It is a debut feature from Tyrese Poe, and I mean, I think like Kitty Green and The Assistant, it's amazing how confident this movie is and how well constructed it is from a first-time filmmaker. It is beautiful to look at. It has this perfect kind of like gangster tone to it, although it's set in a high school and it's about these high school cliques that are facing off against each other. And it just blends those two elements so well. Lovey Simone, who's the main star who plays Sella, is fantastic as this queen bee of high school who is also sort of a crime lord, but is also like insecure about her grades. And just all of those elements come together beautifully. The set design, the costumes. I just was like mesmerized by this movie from beginning to end. I wish I had gotten to see it in a theater because I think that would have been a great experience, but I still loved it watching at home.
Yeah, I like you said, I didn't like it as much as you did, but it is just such an accomplished first time out for a filmmaker. I mean, it's really a well-made film, even if I didn't connect with it 100%. Definitely, a great pick, and I'm interested to see what she's gonna do going forward.
Yeah, I hope she gets the chance, like Corey Finley, to do something, or like Andrew Patterson, instead of a Marvel movie, to do something that's her own original project based on the success of this one.
So, Josh, I'm not exactly proud of my number two pick.
Is it Extraction?
No, it's not Extraction. It's quite possibly worse.
Okay.
It is the video game adaptation, Sonic the Hedgehog. And I'm
Oh
not
my
kidding.
God.
Yeah, I'm not kidding, Josh.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I look. I told you I'm not proud of this. Okay,
Well, I
but
mean, if you just like if you're gonna pick it, like own it. Be
yeah,
proud of it.
if you like something, you like something,
Yeah.
And I am such a fan of that '90s era Jim Carrey. Just the classic era Jim Carrey, and to me, this is peak Jim Carrey all over again. I'm getting one last slice of peak era Jim Carrey here, and I laughed so hard at everything he did in this stupid movie. I even had fun with the Sonic stuff in a kids movie kind of way. I've never been a Sonic the Hedgehog guy. I'm a Mario guy, 100% all the way since I was a kid. But I showed up for this movie for a train wreck, and what I got is one of my favorite movies of the year so far. What can I say? It is what it is.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
You don't have to, but if you have anything else you want to say,
I no,
I could
I mean,
take it.
I don't need to say that I thought it sucked. I mean, I feel like that's a given, and I'm not gonna take down your appreciation. If you love Sonic the Hedgehog, then you're in luck because I think they're making a sequel to it. So you're
I'm
gonna get
so
more.
excited. I'm so excited.
All right, sure.
All right. But my number one won't be as bad. So, what do you got for your number one?
So my number one pick is Oz Perkins, Gretel and Hansel,
Yes.
as alluded to, and yeah, it's a fantastic movie. I'm glad I got to see it in a theater, in a empty theater. I'm pretty sure there were like two other people.
Us too.
Nobody went to see this movie. I mean, I remember when we talked about it. I think it was it was like early January release, maybe.
Yeah.
And we talked about how, it was surprising that this movie even got released in theaters because it's the kind of thing that usually would get pushed to home video.
Sure.
And it's lucky because if this movie had been set to come out in March, it's not the kind of movie that would have been held onto to be released in a theater. It would have just been pushed to Netflix or something like that. So I'm glad I got to see it in a theater. Everything you said about it is true. Sophia Lillis is fantastic. Alice Krige is fantastic as the witch. The production design, the score in this movie is amazing.
Oh yeah, I didn't even mention that. Yeah, so good.
The pacing, it's another pretty short movie, but that like every moment of it builds to exactly the right tone. It's super creepy and unsettling. It's the kind of thing if you watch late at night at home with the lights out, it's going to freak you out. I think Oz Perkins is incredibly talented, and to say again, I hope that he gets the chance to make more movies that are his own weird thing. This is his third movie. I thought his first two were really good as well. I'm sure this movie did not make the kind of money that would give him a Marvel movie, but hopefully it at least gives him a little bit of a budget to make another horror movie because he's great at it. So I don't know. I'm sure it's available for home watching on some platforms to rent, or I don't know if it's on any subscription services, but wherever it is, people should check it out because it's fantastic. And I could even see this, depending on how the whole weird world of movies goes in the next 6 months. I could even see this maybe being my number one movie at the end of the year.
Yeah. That's a strong statement. Not as strong as my Sonic the Hedgehog being on my top 10 movies of the year list, but
Is Sonic the
it's
Hedgehog also number one on your list? Is that how you work it?
ladies and gentlemen. No, it's not. But but yeah, no, I do love Gretel and Hansel. Really freaking great movie. So my number one is a movie called Francis Ferguson, which is again, we talk about these movies that, were 2019 releases. It did hit festivals in 2019, but it is listed as a 2020 movie on Amazon, which is the only place you could see it. But this is just such a movie that is just so connected with its own just dry, just bleak sense of the world. And it's got such a strange sense of humor. And director Bob Byington, who I got to interview here on the show, he's just got such a point of view that I definitely don't think is for everybody, but I connected with this movie so much. I think Kaylee Willis, the star of this movie, it's her first lead performance in a movie, and it's probably my favorite performance of the year as well. She basically is this woman who decides that she's so bored with her life that she has an affair with a student to kind of take her life to back to zero, kind of to throw her life away in a way. And it's a hard ask to ask someone to go along with the protagonist who has an affair with a underage student, but it's hilarious. It is weird. It is dark, and it is my favorite thing I've seen this year.
Well, yeah, I've definitely was aware of your enthusiasm for this movie, and it's something that I should check out because it sounds fascinating.
It is, and also it kind of led me to Seven Chinese Brothers, one of his previous films, which I also love. One of my other favorite things. That's from a few years ago, but another great movie that I wouldn't have even known about if it wasn't for this one. So yeah, so that's our top 10 right there. Before we move on to our honorable mention thing that we want to do, I was going to read off a few uh favorite movie picks from some members of our Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group.
Oh, all right.
Like I said, Jason Harris had mentioned Banana Split. Also, two people, Chad Clinton Freeman and Victor Augustin, mentioned Birds of Prey, which was all right.
I actually up until watching Sea Fever and
Mhm.
adding that to my list, I had Birds of Prey at number 10, so
Yeah,
I
I
liked it as well.
I didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was all right.
Yeah.
Joe Black had Greed, and he was who joined me for the episode on that one. Paul Hibbard mentioned The Five Bloods. Tony Strauss mentioned Shirley, which neither of us have seen yet. William Rill mentioned Gretel and Hansel, which he also said Butt Boy is right behind it.
Oh, I've seen Butt Boy, and again for that VOD column that I do, and I it's something, but it's not a good something.
And then Siggy Vargas mentioned The Way Back, which I actually really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's a solid movie.
Yeah, solid mainstream drama. It was good. And Rich Barnes mentioned Tiger King, but that's not a movie.
No, it's not a movie. Strike that from the record.
Yes, absolutely. So, to finish this thing up, Josh, I said that what I want to do is talk about a few honorable mentions that aren't movies, just other things that we really enjoyed that entertained us this year. That could be TV, it could be music, it could be anything else in the world of entertainment. What do you got for your first one?
So we're not doing these in any kind of countdown order, right?
No set order or anything.
All right. Well, I'll start with music, and I will mention Carly Rae Jepsen and her album Dedicated Side B, which is a sort of companion piece to her album Dedicated that came out last year. And this is something she's done twice now. Her previous album, Emotion, also had a quote Side B, which is it's sort of like an outtakes collection, but her outtakes are like better than the singles released by most other pop singers. I
Mhm.
think she's fantastic and is just like the purest distillation of like catchy pop music that will make you feel good, but it's not like saccharine. It's not like a guilty pleasure. I don't feel bad for liking it. I think it's just impeccably crafted.
Mhm.
And it's oftentimes her lyrics are really clever. And even if they're not, they're just true and fun and make you feel like life is worth living. So
We
seriously,
need
I
that
mean,
now.
I would recommend everything that she's done, but this just came out, I think in May, is Dedicated Side B, companion piece to Dedicated. So I love Carly Rae Jepsen, and this is a chance for me to tell the world about it.
There you go. Scream it from the rooftops. No,
Yes.
I've liked everything I've ever heard from her. I've never dived into any of the albums though, so I probably should one of these
I
days.
highly recommend it. I've seen her in concert, and who knows whenever we'll ever get to see a concert again. But
Oh yeah.
if it happens, I recommend that as well.
I think we'll be at a movie long before that, and that's still
Oh
a long
yes,
ways off.
certainly, certainly.
Well, I'm going to start on the TV side of things, and I'm going to single out just a straight up performance, actually, and that is Tony Dalton's Lalo Salamanca from Better Call Saul season 5, which this character just came in and just stole this whole show away. Every scene he's in just is the best thing that's happened on this show. And I definitely am one of those people in the camp of Better Call Saul is a better show overall than Breaking Bad. I love Better Call Saul. I've loved all 5 seasons, but this just absolutely, I hate the phrase takes it to a new level, but takes it to a new level. He's so much fun every time he's on screen.
Yeah, I'm sure. I never liked Breaking Bad. I gave up on it after 2 seasons, and so I've
Mm.
never watched Better Call Saul, but I know every other person in the world loves it, so I'm sure it's great.
What do you got next?
So I'm gonna go to TV for two more picks. I'll start with something that I think I recommended on this show at one point, maybe when we talked about Gretel and Hansel, because it also stars Sophia Lillis,
Mm.
and that's the Netflix series I Am Not Okay With This, which I feel like deserves way more attention. I mean, everyone is watching Netflix now, and there's a lot of terrible Netflix shows that have become huge sensations. Stuff
Yeah.
like Outer Banks, which is just trash, is just total trash. And yet this show seemed to have kind of come and gone without people really paying much attention to it. But I think it's great. It's like a John Hughes coming of age story meets Carrie, with Sophia Lillis as this awkward teenager who discovers that she has telekinetic powers and has to kind of deal with that along with the typical teenage awkwardness. And she's so good in it. It definitely has a bit of an 80s throwback feel, although it takes place in the modern day. And it's got a great balance between like the character stuff and the comedy, and also like intriguing, weird sci-fi things. And it ends on this cliffhanger that I'm really eager to see what happens next if there ever is another season. But
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know, it's maybe 7 episodes that are like 23 minutes long. It's a super quick watch. And I wish it hadn't disappeared so quickly, because I think it's really worth watching.
Right on. I should watch it. I remember when you mentioned it last time, it sounded really interesting. And like I said, obviously I love the actress Sophia Lillis, and so it's like it sounds great. And yeah, there's a lot of bad Netflix. I will agree with you
So
there.
much, and the bad stuff seems to rise to the top. That's what you look at the Netflix top 10 at any
Yeah,
given moment, and it's just like you weep for humanity. I suppose it's like looking at the box office top 10. It's just a new version of that. But
sure.
you know, to mention Extraction again,
Oh
that's
boy.
it's always way up there, but this one has not been.
Well, my next one also TV. It is Alex Garland's Devs, the FX on Hulu series. I do think it maybe could have done better as a movie. I think maybe they, artificially padded it a little bit like they do tend to do with a lot of these kinds of shows lately. But even with that being said, it is just such a fascinating sci-fi show. Some just, my favorite, like when it comes to sci-fi, I'm not always the biggest sci-fi guy, but when it comes to sci-fi, I want something that's going to really, just like gnaw its way in and make you think for a while. And every week that this show was coming out, every week I was thinking about it just nonstop right up until that next episode came. And then with the finale, continuing on from there. And now that it's over, and it is, it was just a limited series, so it is over. It's not going to have another season or anything. Although Alex Garland has said that he'd really love to make another show with the same cast and just like a totally different thing. And so I'm interested to see what that would be, or I'm interested to see him go back into movies because Ex Machina and Annihilation are just so great. So But it continues a lot of the same kind of themes that he was exploring with those movies, and then a lot of that just impeccable like design choice and like crazy huge scores and just the things that he's been becoming known as a director.
Yeah, I like that show too. I think I agree with your praise and your criticisms. It really, to me, felt like it should have been a movie.
Hmm.
There were a lot of detours along the way that I thought were kind of unnecessary. And I was a little let down by the ending. I felt like it was a little anticlimactic after all that time. Whereas I feel like maybe if it had been like a 2 hour or even 2.5 hour movie, I would have been less let down than if I had spent, nearly 8 hours watching it.
I get that
Um,
completely. Yeah.
but yeah, overall it's good. The production design, all the design sense of it is great, and the performances. I'd love to see him do something else with that cast.
Yeah.
Um, Hopefully, maybe not a miniseries, but
Yeah.
yeah, I liked Devs a lot too. Yeah.
Right on. What do you got for your last one?
So my last thing is another TV show, and it is on Apple TV Plus,
All
which
right.
nobody watches.
Hey,
And
we do.
do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Gina
Well,
and I
then
have
you can.
watched almost every show on there, actually,
Oh my god,
surprisingly.
I actually have watched a lot of their programming as well because I've ended up writing about it, and
Hmm.
almost always I think this is not a reason to subscribe to this service that no one subscribes to.
Yeah.
Um, but to me, this show is like the only reason to subscribe to Apple TV Plus. It's Central Park, the animated show
Mm,
from Lauren Bouchard, who is the creator of Bob's Burgers, as well as from Josh Gad, is the co-creator here and one of the stars. And people hate Josh Gad like a lot,
yeah.
and I don't blame them. I mean, I saw Artemis Fowl, so I
Oh
understand
no.
why people hate Josh Gad. But I feel like this plays to his strengths, which is he's this like ridiculously exuberant musical theater guy. And when he gets the chance to do that in a show that, I mean, it's a musical, it's a full-on musical. Every episode has multiple original songs in big production numbers that feel like they could have come from a Broadway musical. And this is the right place for Josh Gad. The whole cast are just fantastic voice actors and singers. It's got Leslie Odom Jr. and Daveed Diggs, both from Hamilton,
Hmm.
Kristen Bell, Catherine Hahn, Stanley Tucci, and Titus Burgess from The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, who's also a great Broadway star. And it's like super wholesome. It's about this family, the family of the guy who is the like curator, or I'm not sure exactly what his title is, but he like manages the park, and it's him and his family, and they love each other and they try to have fun together. And I think like when I was describing Driveways, which is like a nice movie about people being nice to each other,
Yeah.
this has more antagonism. Stanley Tucci plays this sort of evil real estate developer who wants to buy Central Park and turn it into Times Square. So there's more of that conflict. But most of this movie is just like fun and nice, and it's just like super clever, and the animation looks great. It looks like Bob's Burgers, but that's good.
Hmm.
And the songs are fantastic, they're catchy. So like I never, and I've been actually, at the moment I'm watching another Apple TV Plus show that I have to review. It's just like a chore to get through, and I felt like that about almost all of their shows. And so I was so surprised. I was like, "What? This is good! Not only is this good, like this is like my favorite thing on TV. Like, how is that happening?" But if you haven't gotten to it and you have Apple TV Plus, then watch Central Park.
That's got to be next on my list, I guess, since that's
Yes.
like the only show I think. Maybe there's one or two others, but that we haven't actually watched on there.
There are only a few, which is one of the problems with the whole service, is that they don't have a lot of content.
Yeah,
But
but we
yeah,
got Greyhound coming up soon.
that is true. That is something that is coming up.
That's a thing that's happening. I cheated for my last pick. I combined three albums that were my three
What?
favorite of the year so far. I know, I'm
All
sorry,
right.
Josh, but I'm allowed. So, just briefly, Jason Isbell reunions, which I guess if I had to choose one, that would be my main pick. Which is maybe his best album. It's just absolutely an incredible album. If you're into that Americana kind of thing. Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, been long, way too long since her last album, and this is another excellent one. Just so inventive and so fresh and just exciting and just really from track to track, just she's always trying new things and just a joy to listen to, really. And then lastly, one of my favorite artists, Butch Walker, his new album American Love Story, which is a little all over the place, I think, but it's got some really great songs on it.
I like Butch Walker a lot too, but I feel like he's very hit and miss. And there's
Hmm.
like he's very prolific.
Yeah.
So there's like probably just as many of his albums that I didn't really like, that didn't do anything for me, as that I loved. So I totally didn't even remember that he had a new album out
Yeah.
this year, but I should check that out because his good stuff I think is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. When he's good, he's great, and when otherwise, it's like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot about that one. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that about does it, Josh. Any closing thoughts on the midway point of 2020?
No, I mean, I think my main thought is just that if people are thinking that because movie theaters are closed, there's somehow no new movies to watch or no good movies to watch, they definitely should not think that. And that,
Yeah.
like, every week I'm writing reviews and I'm doing a TV segment and I'm doing radio segments, and I have to like narrow it down to like
Yeah.
what can I cover, because there's so much stuff that looks interesting to cover. So wherever it is, whatever streaming service you have, or if you have the budget to rent some VOD movies or virtual cinema or whatever it is, just keep watching movies.
I have to agree, and you know how staunchly theater anti watching at home I usually am, but it's like there's so much coming out, and I sure as shit am not going to the theater anytime soon.
Oh
So
yeah, no, me neither. I may be going to the drive-in. I'm still kind of like
yeah,
debating that, but I think once we get, if it really happens and we get some of these big releases coming in the next month or so, I'll probably end up at the drive-in.
yeah, that sounds good. I'll be at the car next to you. How about that?
All right, the 10 feet away car next to me
It's a
though.
date, Josh. It's a
Yeah,
date.
sounds good.
Why don't you tell people where they can find your podcast, Awesome Movie Year?
Ah, yes. Awesome Movie Year, co-hosted by Jason Harris. You can listen to wherever you listen to Piecing It Together. You can go to awesomemovieyear.com. You can follow us at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter and at Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, although I don't think I literally have ever posted anything on Instagram. So
One day it'll
don't
happen.
bother. Don't bother. And my stuff, you can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, at Signal Bleed on Twitter, and at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook. And you can still watch me on KTNV Channel 13 here in Vegas on the Friday 11 a.m. news. You can see my living room because I do it all from home.
I love when I catch you on there. It's always great.
Oh,
I'm like, oh my
thank
God,
you.
it's Josh.
You and my grandma. My grandma loves watching it.
Warning, do not listen while hungry.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Barajas, host of All Rice, No Beans, a podcast all about restaurants and the people behind some of your favorite spots to eat, where we talk about how they started, all the ups and downs, and my favorite part, the food and drinks. Ooh, and let's not forget about the desserts. So subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, follow me on all social media because I have the pictures of all the food. And if you want to be on my podcast and you're a restaurant owner or in the business, email me at allricenobeanspodcast@gmail.com. And remember, you were warned. Don't listen while hungry.
All right. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Josh Bell from Awesome Movie Year about our favorite movies of the year so far for 2020. I just threw in that promo for All Rice No Beans because guess what? All Rice No Beans is back. I am very excited about that. We of course had to go on hiatus for the quarantine, the shutdown and everything. It's like it's hard to be recommending restaurants to our listeners when the restaurants are all closed. So we had definitely had to go on that hiatus, but we are back. We've got a few special episodes in a row to kind of lead into the new episodes. And and then we got 3 specials in a row. And then after that, we are going to get back to some of the episodes we had already previously recorded, but didn't get a chance to post because of the shutdown. And then it's time to start speaking to some new restaurant owners, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So All Rice, No Beans, make sure to check that out. Awesome Movie Year, finishing up season 4. Check that out. Season 5 about to start. And as always, thank you for listening to Piecing It Together. And hey, quick plug for Bird Road and Entre Dos, both here on the All Points West podcast network. So that does it for today. I want to remind you, as always, please make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You can rate and review us over on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. I love hearing from you guys. I love hearing what you think of the show. So please do leave us a rating. We would very much like it if it's a 5-star rating, but tell us what you think. We'd love to know. And if you'd ever love to, join me for an episode, I'm always looking for new co-hosts. So get in touch. I would love to have you on a future episode of Piecing It Together. So let's close this thing out as we always do with a piece of music. And I think today, we're talking about 2020 and all of the exciting new releases of 2020. I think it would be appropriate to close this thing out with a piece of my new music that's going to be on my next album. And what should I play for you guys here? I am going to play a track called Like Never Before. This one, I don't know if it's 100% done yet. You're hearing an early track. This album, as of right now, don't quote me on this, but I think it's going to come out on October 4th, which is my birthday, and it's 16 songs. There's going to be some special episodes of this podcast dealing with the process of putting this album together. That's going to be coming soon in the lead up to the release of this new album, because it is kind of a big album for me. I'm really excited about it. And all 16 songs are close to done. Like I said, this song isn't necessarily 100%, but they're all at least close to done, and I just need to do like one more really good pass through on every track to make sure I'm 100% happy with them. So this is basically an entirely finished new piece of music. Again, it's called Like Never Before, and it appears right in the middle of the playlist of the new album. I'm not going to let you know the name of the new album yet, but probably coming out October 4th. I'm really excited about it. And this is what I've been spending my time in quarantine doing, aside from producing dozens and dozens of new podcast episodes for Piecing It Together, All Rice No Beans, Awesome Movie Year, continuing to do Bird Roads, also making a ton of new music. So this is one of those tracks. Enjoy it. Thanks for listening, as always. July is going to be a little bit of a less busy month here on the podcast, because I do want to try to get this album 100% finished by the end of July, as well as some of that music-related podcast stuff that I was just kind of briefly mentioning there. I want to get that stuff recorded now. And while it's all fresh and I'm in the thick of it, I want to get that stuff done during the month of July. It's way too hot out here in Las Vegas. I don't want to leave the house. So I'm going to lock myself in and get it all done while it's too damn hot. And so that means there might be only 4 episodes in the month of July of Piecing It Together. But you know what? We've been doing 8 a month at least the last few months. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 that you haven't listened to yet, so go check those out. Check out those other podcasts I was plugging. Go check out all of them, and there'll still be plenty of Piecing It Together to listen to, and I'm sure we'll be back to the usual way too many episodes coming soon enough. But thank you as always for listening. Thanks for the support, and enjoy this track. It will be out later this year.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.